There are multiple pathways one can take if they want to work in IT. And in this video, I'm going to share with you steps that you can take if you want to get into any kind of entry-level IT role. Currently in the UK, there are lots of IT jobs. It can also be quite a lucrative career to be in if you become very skilled and you're able to excel in your niche or your speciality. Now, let's just clarify something. The term IT is actually a very vague term, just like the term software engineering is so vague, because within the principle of technical jobs, there is so much variation in the area of the speciality that you want to go into. For example, you could be a web developer and working in the front end side. You could be a back end developer working and building programs. You can be a DevOps engineer whose responsibility is managing the process of the software being made, tested, deployed, etc. And at the same time, you could also work in an infrastructure side, as in my case, where you're essentially working in the back end. You're managing the servers that run all the applications for a particular enterprise. Cloud is also a really big thing. Azure, AWS, GCP, even Oracle. When you talk about IT, you can have cybersecurity, you can have the network side, you can have a Windows dedicated side, you can have engineers dedicated to Unix and Linux servers. It's really just so broad, and you need to understand that when you're looking for an entry level role, you don't necessarily have to go into one speciality, and you should be open to different sides, whichever you like. My journey isn't too complicated. I graduated in electrical engineering, but it was COVID and it was pretty hard to get a job. So when I did get my first graduate job, it just happened to be in IT as a graduate support engineer. I really liked it, and since then I've been working in IT. Gradually, as I was working more, I was introduced to the different sides of IT, and I learned more about cloud. I became a little bit better in Linux, and I definitely think that it's a good industry to be in if you can work long term and really hone your skills in a particular speciality. At the same time, I think with IT, you have the ability to constantly upskill yourself. There's so many different branches where you can actually learn those things whilst doing a particular job in a particular side. So you could be a DevOps engineer, but you know a lot about cloud, AWS, Azure. You could be a network engineer, but you're actually really good at programming in a particular language. You could be a Unix engineer and you're really good at Python, and you also know how to use a little bit of PowerShell. That being said, obviously at one point the right thing to do is to ultimately specialize in something. But people do say that IT and software engineering, these are industries where, if I'm not wrong, you constantly have to upskill yourself. You know, you're learning your whole life. There's always new technologies that come, and you're constantly developing yourself. And it's okay. That's really good. It's exciting, and there's always opportunity. So what should you do if you want to get into IT? Now, obviously, I think we've got a large audience of different people here. So let me break it down into three people. Firstly, you have graduates, people who go to university. Secondly, you have people who may finish high school or college and want to go into an apprenticeship. And thirdly, you have people that don't do either and they want to get straight into IT. So let's start with that group first. Now, any entry-level IT role can be competitive. You need to understand that. Even as a graduate, I was once competing for those entry-level IT roles. And if you aren't any of those things, you have to do something to make yourself stand out. And that's why IT certifications can be crucial for a lot of people who want to just get their foot in industry in the first place. They want to get some kind of entry-level IT role, like a junior IT analyst or a service desk analyst, which are great roles, by the way, to start your career in. But that is just one pathway, and it's not necessarily bad. You know, I think the nature of the current trade in software engineering and IT is that sometimes you don't necessarily need academic qualifications to progress. That's not entirely true. For example, if you want to apply to certain jobs at Google, they will literally say MSc in CS, whatever. Obviously, that's a very competitive company to work into, but there are other roles where the nature of IT is such that it really depends on what you know, and they will judge you on your experience. So not going to university and starting your career in an entry-level IT role isn't necessarily a bad choice, but that doesn't mean it's the best choice. So let's talk about apprenticeships. I think these are such a great starting point for your career. In an apprenticeship, you are being trained in a particular skill set. You could do an apprenticeship in cybersecurity. You could do an apprenticeship in software engineering, if I'm not wrong, or in some kind of IT role. And it doesn't even need to be in IT. There's apprenticeships for different trades and industries. And it's great because you are being paid to train and build up your CV whilst learning. And it's so good because you are learning, you are being trained, and you're still being paid. Obviously, you don't have that bachelor degree at the end of your training, unless it's a degree apprenticeship, which are amazing, by the way. Definitely go for one of those if you can. But you still have that training, and that's very important in IT. I think apprenticeships are great because experience is crucial in IT. And for somebody like a graduate like myself, we finished university, we started our career a little bit later. So by a particular age, we have gained this many years in experience. Whereas somebody who may be started in an apprenticeship after college or high school, or even an entry-level IT level role, by my age, they will have more years of experience, and that may make them eligible for a high pay job. Not necessarily, but sometimes that happens. There are people who start off as apprenticeships, and like my age, they were already managers. So it's definitely a great choice. Now, the third choice is being a graduate, going to university. And I think this is perhaps the best choice for people who have the patience to finish university. One of the best jobs, the best roles you can start your career in as a young person is joining a graduate scheme. In a graduate scheme, you join a company as a fresh graduate from university. You start off at a somewhat handsome salary, considering you're a young person with not that much experience. And you will have a dedicated training program for 1 to 2 years. It could be more, it could be 3 years. And at the end of that training program, not only have you become extra qualified in that particular short span of time, but often you get promoted in that same company that you're working in. And once you stay a bit longer in that company and develop more experience, you suddenly become eligible to these very handsome salary, more senior jobs in other companies. You can switch companies and ask for much more money. And graduates have an accelerated rate of progression in their careers. And it's not easy getting into a really good graduate scheme. If you want to get into a good graduate scheme at AECOM, at KPMG, all these big consulting companies, it's not easy. It's very competitive. But it's probably one of the best things you can do as a young person, because I know now from my experience that training in IT and software engineering is just so important. It's so crucial. In my role, I have to do training by myself. I have to, outside my working hours, study a little bit for this particular certification. Perhaps certain things that I may not learn from my job, I just have to take my own initiative. Now, obviously, you can do, it could be the same thing if you're in a graduate scheme, but in a graduate scheme, a lot of stuff is actually part of the curriculum of your job. And in some cases, it may be that your responsibility is more learn rather than do the actual job. And that's so crucial when you're starting your career, because you need to learn. Suppose I was a young person who just finished college and was looking for the best pathway to take. I think degree apprenticeships are so good because not only are you being paid to do your degree and train, but at that young age you're instantly developing experience and you're just building up like a portfolio. They're excellent career choices. However, if I couldn't get into a degree apprenticeship, go straight to university and do a degree in computer science or IT or cybersecurity, because that would make me eligible for graduate schemes and graduate roles, which often start off at handsome salaries and they have training, which is really important when you're a young person. That being said, suppose I didn't actually go to university and I didn't get into a degree apprenticeship, because obviously they can be quite competitive. I would take the initiative to get myself into some kind of entry-level IT role. This could be a Service Desk Analyst, it could be like a junior IT analyst, something. If you are in a position where you want to get your first entry-level IT role or software engineering role, it's important to understand that your academic qualifications might not be enough, assuming you have them, and experience is so crucial. You want to put as much down as you can in your CV, and that's why certifications, work experience, or experience that you've done by yourself that you can post on GitHub are so crucial. Start with any kind of certification that's a bit more geared towards your speciality. For example, if you want to go into cloud, try to do an AWS Cloud Practitioner exam. Try to join a bootcamp if you can. I know in the UK the government actually sponsors a lot of people to join boot camps. Definitely apply if you can. If you want to get into DevOps or software engineering or even in IT, try to see if you can actually do projects by yourself and upload them on GitHub and share all your stuff on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is really important. Don't be afraid to show yourself off on LinkedIn. So all the projects you do, for example, I think early this year I created a website using my own web server in AWS and I uploaded it on LinkedIn. Something like that, it could be simple. If you share enough content on LinkedIn, you may be caught by recruiters and they can be really helpful in getting your first role because they'll catch your eye and they have all these jobs which they need candidates to fill in and you might be just the one. When you're a young person, one of the most crucial things you need to do is seek help from people and you need to seek advice from people. This can be somebody on LinkedIn, you find somebody with a job title which you aspire to be and you just connect with them and you just ask them basic questions and eventually, people are really nice. People hopefully will reply to you and they will give you advice which can be crucial. Also in your personal life, if you know anybody who works in IT or is a software engineer, reach out to them, get help. I know for a fact that in my case, I actually did get some personal help from a family friend who was a senior network engineer and he introduced me to learning Linux. He went through basic Linux commands with me. We went through some basic networking knowledge and he showed me some tools like Nagios and that really helped me in my CV and when I did interviews so I could talk about it. Another thing that you can do is actually go to networking events. So one really popular app is called Meetup. So Meetup I think is an absolutely fantastic app and it's basically used by engineers from different fields to meet together and a lot of amazing events happen in London, New York, big cities. When you go to these meetup events, you can network with like-minded young graduates. A lot of people that actually go to these networking events are young people looking for their first entry-level role. I know if you're in the UK, Microsoft has a space dedicated to a lot of young people and it's a great place to network with graduates, people who are already working and people who just want to get their first role. Speaking of certifications, now actually I would say that not everybody is a fan of certifications, but I think when you're early in your career, even like with me working, it's so important. And certain certifications are actually, they're almost like prerequisites or requirements that are listed in the job description for certain senior jobs. For example, it could be a CCNA, it could be a Azure or AWS certification. Often what these certifications will do is just prove that you have some basic knowledge in that particular field. Now it's debatable what exactly these certifications prove because some can be easy to pass, some can be really hard to pass, but generally speaking they prove that you have a level of competency and understanding in that technology. For example, certain certifications can actually be quite difficult and in order to compete them you really do have to study, you have to practice that particular technology. Whether it's the CCNA and you're managing networking tools in Cisco Packet Tracer, or if it's CompTIA Linux and you have an Ubuntu machine or a Red Hat Enterprise machine and you're practicing all these Linux commands, or it could be an AWS certificate and you're practicing like creating your own web servers or your own databases or storage or whatnot on AWS. Certifications I think really help and they make you stand out outside of the crowd, and when you do them, make sure you share every single thing on LinkedIn. You share the projects that you do. For example, if you're learning AWS and you create some kind of database or whatnot, share it on LinkedIn. Yeah, I made this whatever in AWS. Do it. Ultimately, when you do all these different things, certifications, networking, developing personal skills, it builds up like a portfolio and it makes your CV look really nice, and hopefully it's going to make you more confident when you go into those interviews. Where should you apply to get a job? From my experience, I think one of the best websites to apply to is Indeed. I think in Indeed, it's just for some reason easier for me and you can apply to lots of jobs. When you're in the process of actually looking for your first role, you never know what you're going to get, so you have to apply a lot. Try to make a target. Okay, I'm going to apply to 50 jobs today and I'm not going to go to bed without applying to 50 jobs, and apply every single day. And when you do interviews, you also have to prepare for the interviews. Hopefully the more interviews you do, the more confident you become in your script, and it makes getting that entry level role much easier. Indeed is really good. Total Jobs, I didn't have that much luck with it, But LinkedIn is also a really popular one. So regurgitating the same thing about showing off on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is actually a place where a lot of people get jobs. I personally may have had some phone calls from LinkedIn, and recruiters may have found me from LinkedIn, but it's a great place to show off, and it's also a really good place to apply to lots of jobs. They've got loads of jobs. It can be a bit competitive. So I'll try to wrap the video up here. Thanks everybody for watching this video, and I hope that this video can help a lot of people and give them some insight. Definitely comment and subscribe, and reach out to me on LinkedIn if there's any advice I can give you, if you want me to check your CV, whatnot, whatever. The most important thing is to not give up. It's important that you apply to as many jobs as you can, and eventually that one role that you go into is all you need to get your first foot into industry. And often once you actually get your first role and you develop experience, it can get easier then. Thanks guys for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.